Welcome to Eternal Paradigm. Together, we're uncovering the human experience and exploring physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual stories with me, your host, Amy Ravel. Hello, welcome to this episode of Eternal Paradigm. I hope you're enjoying your journey to find you. This is quite a deep episode. So I want to start from the point of purpose. Seeking purpose, defining purpose, and believing in purpose has become a point of awakening for many of us. Everyone has a different way of finding and living to fulfill their purpose. But my question to you is, are you doing this consciously? In this episode, I'm joined by an incredibly deep and spiritual energy who is known as Tony DADA. He's a creative, conscious entrepreneur. Tony has dedicated his life to realizing what he calls his selfish vision, in which he has made it his purpose to empower, engage, and lift others to meet and find their higher selves. And his work is embedded in a foundation of spiritual connection. You'll hear Tony share his story about listening deeply to his soul, or what he refers to as an intense desire within my soul. He talks about finding and learning from his spiritual master. His work is focused on creating a conscious change and leaving a meaningful impact on the lives of all the people that he works with. Be prepared in this episode to feel Tony's creative energies as he speaks so openly, not only about his experiences, beliefs, and his lived realities, but he also shares his perceptions, the impact of his experiences on his own life, and how this has moved to help and shape everything that he does for everybody that he wants to empower. In this episode, we also talk about Tony's foundation principles, which are also found in his book called The Grow Personal Success GPS System. He also talks about some of the work that he does with young people and how he is committed to ensuring that relationships and personal relationships and just people's genuine understanding of the being that they are. Tony spent the last 25 years coaching and training people through workshops, programs, courses, and it's been absolutely amazing to talk to him in this episode. I hope you enjoy listening.
Hi, my name is Anthony Abiola DADA, but I'm known as Tony DADA, the conscious creative social entrepreneur. It's a mouthful, and I'll explain what that is in a moment. But I live in the UK, London city to be exact. And as I say, I am a conscious creative entrepreneur. I've been investing in the lives of people from disadvantaged backgrounds and those who have been deemed and marginalized by society as disaffected, whether they be youth, people of color, or women. Those typically seem to be the people that I resonate with. And as I say, have been doing this for the last 30 years. So you might be wondering what a conscious creative entrepreneur is. And so the best way that I describe that is in this way. Wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. No more backward thinking. Time for looking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There is so much hatred, war, and poverty. So there you go. Just a flavor. I'm a singer. I'm a creative. I'm a songwriter. And so when I talk about myself as a conscious creative entrepreneur, I use my gift of creativity in a conscious way. So I've been blessed to have had a spiritual mentor for some 37 years. And he taught me how to be conscious in all of my doing and expressions. And so hence the term conscious creative entrepreneur. So I consciously use my gift of creativity to do business, but not to do business primarily just to make money, but to make a difference in the community, in society. Entrepreneurs are always coming up with new solutions. And so I use my creativity to find different, new, exciting ways to engage with people. And so that they may be able to, in a sense, become able to live fulfilled lives and empowered lives. And that's what I'm about. And that's what I do. So I'm really glad to be here this evening. And thank you so much, Ermi, for inviting me.
I am totally impressed. I love the singing. That was truly amazing. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was good. I wasn't expecting that. So
I
that was
know.
a lovely buzz. Yeah.
Okay.
Beautiful. Incredibly great impact, really, because people do generally tend to stop and listen to a tune and actually try to connect with the words. So music is very good at being able to do that.
Absolutely. And that's why I sung that song, because consciously since 2013, I've been singing that song, and people may want to go and check that song out. I didn't write it, but it's an old song written way back. And I think it was a Motown song. So it's called Wake Up by, I believe, an artist by the name of Teddy Pendergrass. And the song is talking about people waking up to the realization that there's a new day, that we have to find a new way to teach our young people to make a difference in the world, because the world is not getting any better in the way that it is being run. And so through most of my events, I would open up consciously, as I said, from 2013 to this present day, saying to people, wake up. And well, some did heed that, and others, well, the year 2020 has forcibly caused many of us to wake up.
That is something I totally understand what you're saying. And can you explain, when you say wake up, what do you mean? What are you expecting people to take from that?
So that's a great question. And when I say wake up, I mean the difference between sleepwalking through life and consciously moving through life. I remember once, many years ago, when I was a kid, I bumped into my sister one evening, and she was coming down the stairs, and I didn't realize until she began to open up the front door and walk out that she was actually sleepwalking. So she had seen me on the stairs, she had said hi to me, but she was actually sleepwalking. And I use that analogy to say that that's what many of us have been doing through our lives. We go to school, we go to college, we go to university, we get a job, we're told that we're supposed to, get married and have a job for life. Of course, those things no longer exist. But all of these things have almost been scripted for us, and we just follow the script. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about wake up. Wake up to the reality that each and every one of us, well, in my humble opinion, has a purpose. And they say that the two most important days of your life are, one, the day that you're born, and two, the day that you wake up to why you were born. So that's what I mean when I talk about waking up.
Yes, that definitely hits home with me. So moving on to my next question, which is what you touched on, people sleepwalking through life. And, as people, we have so many aspects to us, perceived aspects to us when we kind of live, all the different avatars that we adopt in life, the mother, the father, the job role for a life, and all these different things. Now, they themselves are just a small kind of part of who we are here, serving a purpose. Is that something that you kind of connect with? Or what's your take on the many roles that we have here, and how we bring absolute internal core spiritual kind of purpose into all of those avatars that we play here?
Well, my take is there is only one role. And as I said, when we wake up to what that role is, then all of the titles and all of the labels fall away. The truth is that we are spiritual in essence, first and foremost, here to grow our soul through experiences. And through that process, we may be labeled, or in terms of being able to fit into society. Society may wish to give us roles and labels, but there lies the problem, because if a fireman identifies so strongly with his role as a fireman that when he comes home to his family, he doesn't take off his fireman's suit, you'd be saying there's a problem. And this is what has happened to many of us. We have attached our whole identity to the label that we have. And you can prove this by taking away that title or that avatar, as you say, and see how someone who is very confident in themselves can then turn into someone who's very withdrawn and has a sense of, I am worthless. And we're going to see a lot of that in these weeks and months and years ahead of us as a result of the tens and hundreds of thousands of people who are losing their job and now are unemployed, and they've never been in this position before, or it's been a long time since they've been in this position. And so my whole thing is really, this is what I mean when I talk about waking up, because when you wake up to who you truly are and what you really are, then your life becomes about expressing that. When you know that you are a spirit of love, or a spirit of joy, or a spirit of care, then your life becomes about finding ways that will enable you to give off that spiritual fragrance that you are. Just like an onion, when you are walking into someone's kitchen, if they're cooking with onions, you smell the onions before you see the onions, because that's the fragrance that comes from the onion. I believe that we are here to give our fragrance so that people will be able to, even before they meet us, they'll know what we're about, because our fragrance will go ahead of us and be making a difference.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Right, you mentioned right at the beginning that you've had a spiritual master for, is it 37 years?
Yeah, I met him in 1983.
Oh, can you tell me more? How did that come about? What happened?
Well, have you heard of, I'm sure you're familiar with The Secret, the Law of Attraction?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I believe that was, it was way before The Secret, the movie, came out, but I believe that was actually what happened. I had that experience in that, I made myself intentionally homeless. And I know we're going to talk about that in more detail, but that was as a result of an intense desire in my soul to discover my purpose. And it would seem that life would have it such that within 6 months of making myself intentionally homeless, this man showed up. He didn't live in this country. He lives in Ghana, where he's based. He just happened to be in the UK on vacation. And I was introduced to him on one occasion, and that was it. It was like magic. Kind of deep, right?
Yes, but I totally understand. I am fascinated though, because you said that the intense desire within my soul. What was that feeling? What was that pull?
It was more about looking around my environment and not being able to connect and not liking what I was experiencing. So I was a young, teenager and born to Nigerian parents. So on the one hand, I was having problems at home with my father, who, having come from Nigeria and with the purpose of really just wanting to study and get his qualifications as a lawyer and then go back home, was incredibly frustrated with the racism and all the kind of, challenges that he found here. And so he saw me as a son. I was the eldest, who should be eternally grateful for the experience that I was having in the UK, because I wasn't, I had all of the comforts seemingly, but of course I didn't know anything else. So for me, I didn't really have that perspective. And so we didn't really get on very well. Then at the same time, in my school, I was experiencing all kinds of challenges. And so because in those days, I was one of a very few handful of children who was from Africa, or whose parents were from Africa. And so, strange as it might seem, I was having conflict with other black children. It wasn't even, an issue with white children, but it was severe problems with Jamaicans and West Indians at school. And then on the council estate, it was much of the same, to the point that, I ended up having to get into a gang to kind of protect myself. And when I looked at all of those things in that environment, I was like, this is just not me. I need to discover my path. And when I think back to it now, I think you must have been crazy, Tony. Like, why would you do that? But I think the soul knows what it's here for. And so I would never have dreamed of doing such a thing consciously now. But at the time, it didn't even seem like a thing. It was like, I have to do this. And sometimes in life, I realize that that's what we have to do, which is get comfortable being uncomfortable. But more importantly, I think it was my vision that allowed me, my focus on my vision, that I wanted a better life. That was all I saw. And I, as a result, didn't see the danger or the peril in what action I was taking.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Can I ask, how old were you when you kind of got into the gang?
So I can tell you when. It was 1983, and in fact, I can tell you exactly when I left home, and you probably will know why. I'll be able to tell you that, and I'll express it now in the way that, as a creative, I would do. So it's, hear what my mother had to say when I told her that I was on my way. The month happened to be February. The year was 1983. She said, son, be good, write letters to me, and don't you forget your family. And as you walk on the street alone, she said, son, remember this song. Don't you walk with no bad wipe pussy. And don't you talk with no bad wipe pussy. She said, hear me now, don't you walk with no bad wipe pussy. These were the words that she said to me. So I wrote that song around that time, and it's obviously a song that stayed with me all the years. And you may notice that it has a kind of reggae flavor to it, which is kind of almost contradictory to what I was saying earlier on, in that I was having a lot of conflict with people from the Caribbean. But equally, in my soul, I had a passion and a love for reggae music, because I truly believe it's the music of the soul. And so I actually used to write a lot of my songs, with, and sing on sound systems with reggae being the backdrop.
Again, that was amazing. So heartfelt. So, so amazing. So every time you're going to sing during this podcast, you're going to hear me kind of stop and kind of get myself back together.
Okay.
And then come back to refocus.
All right. I might have one more for you. So.
Oh, fabulous. I can picture and understand a lot of what was happening at that time. And can I just ask you if that's okay with you? The whole thing you said, my parents came from India. So growing up, there was always this, but you have all the material comforts.
Right.
What else do you need?
Yes.
And there was always this kind of sense of unease inside, this constant searching that was never kind of fulfilled. Is that similar to how you felt?
Absolutely. Yes, it was. And I know that you can identify, and this is why I say that we are spirits first and foremost. I mean, I was actually planning, and I left when I was 18 to answer your question, but that was about my third or fourth attempt. I'd actually started from as young as 14, I think, or 15, not running away, but actually, like on one occasion I moved in with my uncle. He had seen how things were not good at home, and so he stepped in and said, yeah, you can stay with me. So, it had been several attempts, but to come back to the point that you made, you see, the soul has a deep sense of knowing. I believe that our soul, our heart, is more intelligent than our brain and our mind. And so sometimes you can't even articulate that which is deep within your soul. And so on a superficial level, your parents will provide you with all of the material things. And of course, on face value, you should be grateful. But if it isn't nurturing your soul, there will be a longing for something else. And there will come a point when that longing to discover will be so compelling that you will do whatever is necessary to enable you to move towards that self-discovery. Because for me, that is really what it's all about, to discover who and what we truly are.
Yes. On the note of the fact, when you're talking about we are essentially spiritual, would you say beings or spiritual entities?
Well, spiritual beings, in that, for me, the whole existence here is about being who you and what you are. So, okay, if you are a loving being, then your life experience will and should be one that gives you the opportunity to give off of that fragrance. Are you with me? So our lives is not about the things that we do. And I truly believe that 2020 will be remembered as the year where that realization began to dawn on mankind in an ever increasing and illuminating way. We've been too preoccupied, as you said, with the different avatars. They are roles, they are things that we do: doctor, lawyer, mother, father. But really, it's not about what we do, it's our beingness. How are you expressing that being? You can have the role of a mother or father, but the child will know whether you are being a mother or father.
Yes, I totally understand that. So coming on to my next question, which is how do you, so clearly there's a significant creative energy. I'm interested in how you, I guess, reflect. How many times do you reflect in a day on what's happening around you, or your thoughts or your actions?
Well, the ideal, is to be in a state where moment by moment, through every moment, that awareness is there. And that's where the consciousness comes into play. So I know what that state feels like when I'm in that zone. And so if I find myself slipping out of that zone periodically through the day, then I'll take a little moment to get back into that zone. I like to start off my day. So the very first few hours of every day is my time, me time, really anchoring myself in my essence and also in my vision for the day. And then about 9 o'clock, that's when now I'm available for others, because I've filled my vessel and I've now got that charge to release. Just like when you charge your battery, before you go out to work, or well, that was pre-lockdown for those of us who working from home now. But
Yes.
in the morning you charge your phone, and then you use your phone. You use that energy that your phone has to make your calls, and then by the end of the day, you may have low energy on your low charge on your phone. And I see my spiritual energy in exactly the same way. Charge, and then I have this capacity to be able to then express, and it's about consciously seeing where and looking for opportunities to express my essence. That's my kind of ideal way of functioning through every day.
When you met your spiritual master, what you're talking about now, was this part of the teaching and learning that happened in that kind of relationship? Or how was that process? Because I think nowadays people are not so used to having a spiritual mentor or a coach, or, it could potentially be a celebrity or something different. And again, I come from a culture where having a spiritual guide or a guru is still okay. It's normal. So I'm interested in exploring that relationship a little bit more, if that's okay with you.
Okay, yeah, we could do that. So,
Great.
well, I put it this way. I mean, the ironic thing is, when I met him all those years ago, some of the things that he was saying, like I was asking him loads of questions, and it kind of didn't make sense to my head, but made sense to my heart, which is a kind of weird one. And so I was just drawn to him. And my thing was, I was kind of skeptical, but I was like, okay, I'm going to roll with you for a little minute, because I'm going to find out that, whatever your theory or your philosophy is, it's flawed, because I'm going to show you that it's flawed. And that was me in my naive state of
Oh, wow. And yes, wow. So
do you know what
that
I'm saying?
became your mission
That was
to,
my mission, yeah, kind of.
wow.
And coupled with the fact, though, I mean, I liked his vibe. Like I said, there was an instant soul connection. And I also kind of logically thought, well, I'm not having any parental guidance from anyone out here. I'm living literally, I'm on the road, I'm on the street in a gang, and that was my family. So if I'm hooking up with this guy every now and again, then he's kind of like that adult, that father who's able to speak and just give me a little bit of guidance. So I was kind of hedging my bets a little bit, and so that's how the relationship began. But he started introducing some things, and for me, as I said, very skeptical. So I'm not taking on board anything unless I can prove it for myself. And I began to implement a couple of things that he had suggested to me. Certainly, I remember one of them around mindset and just in setting intentions. And when I put it to practice and saw the result for myself, I was like, okay, now you got my attention. Like, I need to learn more stuff with you. And that's how the journey began.
Cool. You know what fascinates me about mindset and intention, and this is speaking from a personal perspective and from some of my personal coaching clients that I've worked with. And what tends to happen is you get to this point where you've set your intentions and you've worked on your mindset, and then all of a sudden, when your intentions are actualized, they're realized, you're kind of in a state of shock, and then it's kind of been working through this, wow, this is actually what I was kind of working towards. and then it happens, and it's this shock almost. But
Absolutely. It is
so,
absolutely.
yeah, is that how you felt initially?
Yes, that's initially how it's happened, and then you have another experience, and so you have another state of shock, and then it happens again and again, and so that's really what's happened to me. I have had so many moments of shock that I'm like, okay, now this is not a coincidence. I need to understand or begin to explore what is the law, the underpinning universal spiritual principles that are behind or underneath these experiences that I'm having. I need to understand them. And so that's really kind of what I began to do. And well, you can imagine, I mean, I could tell you so many stories. And each time I have these wow moments, it's no longer shock because I understand some of I understand these universal laws and principles, but I never stop having wow moments like wow, because what happens is once you've had that kind of an experience, your faith is actually expanded. So next time when you set your intention will be and should be bigger and more, just wider and just more daring. And then when you get that manifested, you have another wow moment, and now you want to do just crazy things. And so hence the reason why, when I made the conscious decision back in 2013 to move into society. So prior to that, I'd been working for, 20 odd years exclusively with just young people, women and people of color. But, and 80% of that was really young people through my not-for-profit organization. But in 2013, I made a conscious decision, having had a conversation with my spiritual mentor in 2012, setting the intention in the form of a mastermind meeting that I wanted to teach, or I wanted to take some of the things that I had learned from him into the wider society, because I truly felt that the things that I had learned and the impact it had had on my life, I truly believed that there were thousands of people in wider society that could benefit from some of the things that I'd learned. How I was going to do that, I didn't know. But the point I want to make is so we set the intention in 2012, and then I made that conscious decision January 2013 to begin this journey. And midway through the year, I remember having a conversation with my spiritual mentor, and we were talking. His name's Brother Ishmael Tete, I should mention. And I was telling him, I kind of had some cash flow issues. And I remember he looked at me and he just asked me a question. He said, "You have properties, right, son?" And in that moment, I knew what he was saying to me, in the sense that I knew what I had to do. So I then sold one of my properties to give me enough funds so that I could really begin to do the work. Now, the point I'm making is when I shared with people what my intention was, to just invest, a ton of money into this vision that I had, people were looking at me like I was crazy. My point being, though, when you've had as many wow moments as I've had, that was not a thing. It didn't faze me at all. I knew that it was going to be money well invested, because as my mentor had made me aware, life was giving me an opportunity to fulfill that vision. And if I didn't sell that property to give me the funds, well, then life would have known that I was just doing the talk, but I wasn't really committed to follow through and take the action. And it's one of the best things that I did, because it's from that I was able to just freely just learn and engage with people and discover that, as I had thought, there was a desperate need in wider society for some of the teachings that I've learned. And in addition to that, it's taking some of those foundational things. But my preoccupation for the last at least 36 years has been, how do I take some of the things that I've learned and package them in such a way that people in the West will be able to assimilate them in a way that makes sense and resonates, and then see the benefit real quick. So I've kind of taken a long way to sum up all of that, but I hope it kind of makes sense and answers your question.
Yes, it does. Before I move on to the big question that I really want to ask you, I'm going to ask you something else beforehand, which is, we've talked about this whole thing about how humans become so caught up in life and what success looks like. What is your perception of what success looks and feels like?
Great question. And I put it in my book, The GPS System, 7 Universal Principles for Growing Personal Success. And I define success in three ways, or I should say it constitutes three things. One, being able to do what you love. Two, doing that which honors you. And three, being of service to the world. So number one, doing what you love. So the analogy I give is, well, a drug dealer could say he loves, what he does, but does it honor him? No, it doesn't. So it's those three things constituted. I believe that's what success is. So in my case, every day I get to wake up and have done for all the entire of my adult life. I get up every day doing what I love to do, which is to invest in people and to inspire and mentor and coach people. Does it honor me? Yes, it does. The other day, just last week, there was a situation around the corner from me where there was some misunderstanding going on and the police was called and they were addressing the matter with myself and someone, a member of the public. And as we were just having the conversation, this guy walked up because we were standing outside a mechanic, Quick Fit, and the gentleman said, "Is your name Tony?" And I said, "Yeah." It turned out this is someone I'd mentored and been coaching back in 2008.
That's amazing.
And in that moment, it was just the police officer they were just blown away. They were like, yeah, because it was a character reference instantly. And so, as I say, so that's number two. It honors you, and it's also number three because it's not about self gratification. It's about doing what you love that honors you, but is a blessing to others also.
Yeah. So on that point, I often get asked questions around things like, when you're doing things that you love, how are they not kind of self-gratifying? I kind of try and explain that the ego isn't involved, but I'd like your take on this.
Well, in a way, it is self-gratifying because so I'm consciously growing my soul. And I know that the way that I do that is for me to express the qualities of my soul. And so if the quality of my soul is empowering people to live fulfilled lives, then the more people that I'm able to impact in that way, I'm satisfied. Like I derive that benefit, whether they thank me for it or not. I guess in that sense, it's selfish. So, for example, when we're running our business, we're coming towards the end of the year. And like most businesses, they talk about, wanting to see your bottom line, how much is your profit? Well, I remember having an interview with Michael Beckwith from The Secret because he's also in our circle. We get together every 5 years and go back to Ghana with Brother Ishmael, my spiritual mentor. So that's a whole story in itself. But in this interview that I did with him, he talked about the 4 P's of success, where not only should you be interested in profit, but you should be interested in people as well as purpose and the planet. And so in our business, I want to know how much have I been able to invest in people? I have a target at the end for each year. So as well as profit, I also want to reach that target, whether it be £50,000. We have a bursary and I want to invest £50,000 into and supporting individuals. Well, all of that is really coming from my vision. It's my vision. I own it. I possess it. And if that makes me selfish, then that's what it is. But as a result of me selfishly focusing on expressing and achieving those goals, others benefit as well.
Thank you. So, the question, you intentionally made yourself homeless, which you alluded to earlier, which for many people at the moment, with all the different things that are going on, that's a reality for people, although it's not an intentional act. Can you share if this was like an intentional act of what we call self-sabotage, or was it you kind of seeking to the cause of your soul? How did it come about? What happened?
Well, as I mentioned earlier on, I was very clear that my journey of self-discovery would occur outside of that family home and outside of that vicinity where I resided. And I was so sure of that as a young teenager that I was prepared to stake everything on it. But I didn't see it as a gamble. I saw it as this is what I must do. And so this is why I truly believe that there is an understanding that comes from your head, and then there's a wisdom that comes from your soul. And clearly I was in touch with my soul. And so, yeah, it was, I'd spoken to my mother about it, and off I went.
And can I, if you don't mind me asking, in terms of your relationship with your parents afterwards, after you moved out, how was there a relationship? Is it something that your choices and actions, is it something that they could understand?
Oh yeah, I mean, my mother was in favor of it because she was experiencing and seeing and witnessing the toxic energy between my father and I. So she was in favor of it. And where my father was concerned, we were able to reconcile to a degree, I think. After a while, I met a young lady, and then I had a child, and so I would bring, my children to the home, and that always helps to sort of ease tension and things like that. But the funny thing is, within 10 years, I found myself homeless again.
I'm glad you're laughing about it.
It's funny. It is funny. I have to laugh now because,
Yeah.
like, who does that? I mean, this one wasn't intentional. Unfortunately, it was. I don't know if I'd mentioned this to you. I mean, and I don't know if your audience want to hear it. I mean, would you want to hear the
Go
story?
for it. Yeah, go for it. Absolutely.
So it was the result of a relationship breakdown, unfortunately. And by that time I'd had two children, and my children's mother, in her infinite wisdom, decided that I had to leave. And so one day I'd come back. I'd been away for a weekend and knocked the door, and I was told I couldn't come in. I'm like, what do you mean? And she said, you can't come in. Anyway, obviously I got into a huff. Next minute, the police was called, and I was told that Mr. Dada, clearly the woman doesn't want you in the house. And so anyway, cut a long story short, I was homeless again. But that one really hurt because that was a shock and didn't expect that. And I also had two young children at that time. So that was definitely the worst period of my life. But I mention it because it was the most significant period of my life. Because in that moment when, as I say, it was a terrible time. But I then remembered something that my mentor had said to me once. And what he had said was, it doesn't matter what happens to you. What matters is how you respond to what happened to you. And the moment I caught that memory, it just did something to my soul. And I thought, what if life was actually giving me an opportunity to put into practice all of the things that I had learned in theory by my mentor? And so in that moment, there was a complete transformation. Rather than being a down and out and, doom and gloom, I just was transformed, and I identified my passion, obviously, as a creative. And I was also obviously desperate to see my children. And I realized how, and I guess this is where my passion for supporting young people has come from. Because those innocent children of mine were not aware of our issues, but yet they were suffering because they weren't able to see their dad. And so I began to invest and support, young people. And that was the beginnings of my finding my purpose. We started a not-for-profit organization by accident that went on to raise almost £2 million that invested in young people. I was able to reconnect with my children. In fact, I then actually had my children had sole custody of my children as a single parent and raised them. And so the story got good. And that's why I laugh, because at the time it was terrible. But in the long run, and when I look back, I actually realized that there was no other way. Like, it was the best way that the universe could get me onto the path for my self-discovery and my purpose. And so here I am, doing what I love doing.
I totally love that. What do you say to people who can't look at it from the way that you've kind of perceived these events, and how you can look back and, reflect on it and look at it in a way that has really helped shift your experiences in line with your soul, if that makes sense?
Yes, it does. Well, it's two things that come to mind. One is mindset. The people that are not able to be fluid and flexible have their mind set a certain way. And who's to say that the way that your mind is set is the right way or the best way for your growth. See, the ability or inability to be flexible is the problem that many people find in the West. And then the other thing is your belief system. You see, many of us have been conditioned to operate in a certain way. And many of us actually do not have a belief system, or do not know what our belief system is. The reason why I'm able to smile about these things and laugh about them is because, you see, the magic of life is that life, as if it were, knew what I was going to be facing, and so brought me into contact with someone who would give me a deep understanding of life and help me to begin to cultivate my belief system, my core values, so that when I was faced with challenges and adversity, I had something to draw on. Many people don't have that. And this is why the work that I do in our organization now is really through a very simple exercise, help people to understand that there are key important aspects of every human being which, if not given attention, will ensure that you do not have a successful life. There are 5 key areas. Would you like to know what those 5 key areas are?
If you're willing to share, absolutely.
Oh, for sure. The
Yeah.
key areas, and this is outlined in my GPS system, my book, the GPS system, Grow Personal Success. There are 5 key areas, and those areas are your mental and emotional state, your physical state, your health and well-being, that is, the state of your soul or your spirit. And so we're not talking religion here, we're talking about that invisible aspect of you. The state of your relationships, meaning your relationships with not just your environment in terms of your work colleagues, your family, your spouse, etc., but more importantly, and this is something that I find invariably people do not tend to have, is the state of the relationship that you have with yourself. And then fifth and last of all is the state of your business, finance, and money. So if you think about it, we've never met, but I'm sure you would agree that we all have these 5 areas that need attention. The challenge or the problem is no one has actually shown us the importance of focusing on each of these areas. So what tends to happen in society traditionally, you might have the go-getter who spends all of his time in the office working night and day to make that money. He's on a hustle, he's on a grind, he's got to make that money. And he does, but to the detriment of his health. Well, that don't make sense, because now you're going to be using all that money for treatment. Do you see my point? The magic is in understanding that these 5 key areas can be looked at and nurtured within a framework. And it's taken me, all of these years, decades, to create that framework. And it's amazing because it's very simple. It's a 2-week program, but when people come through it, it's like it just opens your eyes to who you really are. Because for each of those 5 areas, I say that there must be a vision. So not just a vision for your life, but a vision for your mental and emotional life, a vision for your spiritual life, a vision for your health and your well-being, a vision for your relationships, and a vision for your business and money. And not only a vision, but goals alongside each of those. And it sounds really complex, but the way in which we present it and enable you to engage with yourself, we have, I would say, in 80%, maybe 85% of cases, when people have gone through that process, they say, I have never spent that kind of in-depth quality time with myself, and come out with a sense of clarity. And so that's really what I'm about. Our mission is to introduce that to 500 people, 1,000 people, however many people we can reach. They don't even have to have coaching with me, because that, it seems like it plants a seed in the soul of the individual, and they then begin to walk the path of self-discovery. So whether that's with us or with someone else, it makes no difference, because we're making a difference on the planet, that people are now interested in the growing and cultivating of their soul. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. But I'm already with you. So
Oh yeah, okay, that's what I'm talking about.
I'm already with you. I am totally there. And that does make total sense. It's exactly like you said. It's doing that, whatever it takes to get people to start that absolute journey of self-realization and discovery. So yes, moving on. You talked about, or you have mentioned when we do the actual form, your female energy. Now, I'm interested in this because, again, we have very prescribed ideas ideas of men, women, gender, sex, whereas energy, there is still a male and a female energy, and all of us possess both aspects of it. How did you work on connecting with your female energy?
Well, I began to observe my life. You see, the ironic thing, the interesting thing was, as a young teenager, you see, I was really quite smart, and I'd already planned my life, and and children were not on the agenda for a number of years. I'm talking about, I remember speaking to my then girlfriend at the time and saying I wasn't wanting to have children until I was about 30 because there was things I wanted to do. So when I found myself at the age of 27 with 2 children as a single parent, I'm like, what the hell just happened here? Yeah. And through meditation, I realized that actually life had placed me in a position where, well, to raise 2 children, I had to draw on my feminine energy. So actually, in hindsight, it was the perfect environment, having a boy and a girl. I mean, I made a ton of mistakes because I truly believe that I don't think a man is on his own raising a child or children is the done thing, but I was forced to develop that feminine side. So it's not just about do as I say and being very linear in my approach, but recognizing and using a more holistic approach, which is what the feminine energy is about. And of course, being a nurturer and a carer. Well, if I'm having to play mother and father where my children are concerned, well, right there on a daily basis, moment by moment, I'm having to cultivate and nurture that feminine energy. So that's what I mean when I talk about that. And in hindsight, I realized that process of raising my children as a single parent was actually equipping me for the very work that I do now.
And how's that? What is it that you learned about yourself? Because you also say that your children were your biggest teachers. Is that what you mean? Is that what you're alluding to?
Yeah, because, I realized that taking the very strict approach didn't work, and it was about relationship, and it's about communication, activating that spirit of love, so we win together. All of these qualities, understanding, being a listener, all of these qualities I learned from my children as my teachers. Sometimes it was me learning naturally, sometimes it was me making a mistake and seeing the implications or the ramifications of that mistake and thinking, oh man, like I got to take responsibility for that. I messed up, but all of those things now have equipped me so that when I'm mentoring and coaching and supporting people, well, I understand because I've been there, raising and growing children is one of the greatest things that you can do. And it has been a blessing to my soul. And it's just given me a different kind of patience. It's made me into, I believe, a better human being. And so with that awareness, I'm able to bring that to support people who approach me to mentor and coach them, and especially because my coaching is a different approach in that it's from a holistic perspective. So, Brother Shmo used to say to me, any mentoring or coaching that does not include spirituality is incomplete. And so I bring that to my work. So everything that we do is really underpinned with that essence.
Thank you so much. So another question, where can people find your book?
It's on Amazon.
Perfect.
Yes, so you can find it on Amazon, and I'll give you a URL in a moment, because at the moment we do have some promotions going on where if you're in the UK, you can receive a copy of my book just via post, just covering the postage and packaging. So yeah, either way, Amazon, okay, or I'll give you the URL. And in terms of our forthcoming webinars, so we do every Friday, we do a webinar for our members, and we also allow guests to join us via Facebook and Instagram. So I'd love to give you our Facebook page if that was okay, in case anyone would like to find out more and join us on one of the Fridays. Could that be okay?
Absolutely. I'll share that. You're more than welcome to share the details on here, but I'll share it on the actual text that goes with this as well.
Okay, well then that's fine.
Brilliant. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Eternal Paradigm. Join me next time.